But you are Kool-Aid.
Well, people get freaked out when you drink from your own head.
Kool-Aid is a refreshing drink that has been around for longer than many people can remember. In part 2 of our Kool-Aid series, we continue uncovering facts that might not be known to many people about this granddaddy of all non-carbonated drinks. Some facts are fun, while others are on the dark side. We lay them all out right here. The Top 10 Untold Truths of Kool-Aid, Part 2. The Power of Powder.
First you get the sugar, then you'll get the power.
So what could go wrong when it's the 1920s and you're marketing a concentrated syrup that ships to customers in large, unwieldy glass containers? Of course, a lot could go wrong. And a lot did go wrong as the parcels burst in the mailman's satchels or along the bumpy road. Sometimes the package would arrive safely to your front gate, but couldn't quite make it to your front door. It is rumored that dogs played a major part in increasing the Kool-Aid bottle casualties as they attacked their perennial nemesis, the mailman. Facing an imminent disaster, Edwin Perkins, the man behind Kool-Aid, had to think fast to find a way to deliver his lemon, grape, raspberry, and cherry-flavored drink to the customers without ruining the mailman's uniform and dooming his nascent company's prospects in the process.
Tilt your head back and I'll lean my liquid down into your mouth.
Perkins came up with the idea of turning his syrup into powder, and there you have it. The powder packets were born and reached the thirsty customers just in time for a pitcher of refreshing fruit juice. Now, to be fair, Perkins didn't invent the powder solution. He simply borrowed the idea from Jell-O. But that's neither here nor there in the larger scheme of things. History will always remember that moment Perkins switched to powder as a decisive moment in the history of Kool-Aid as we know it. Kool-Aid Man flirted with comic books.
This drink, I like it.
We talked before about the Kool-Aid Man, the famous mascot who was so popular at one point in time that he had his own video game or two. Here's another fun fact about that coolest of all mascots. He also made a few appearances in comic books, delighting or scaring children everywhere. Now, you might be asking yourself how on earth could a bulky pitcher be saving the world from evildoers and villains who are, by custom, dashing and athletic figures? And that would be a valid question.
Another!
To answer it, we'd have to go back in time to the early 1980s, when sci-fi films had cheesy plots and horrible visual effects. They were simpler times then, and Marvel was still a struggling company trying to sell dreams to kids, who were turning away from comics to the more appealing video games industry. Marvel decided, for no good reason at all, to create a comic book starring our Red Pitcher. His MO was crashing into people's homes without breaking its delicate structure, with a small pitcher in his hand to save the thirsty multitudes. Hardly the kind of plot one would expect from a comic book about superheroes and larger-than-life villains, right? And you can say what you like about the 80s, but at least people could tell when they were being taken for a ride by a glass pitcher with cubes of ice dancing at its top. The comic lasted 3 inglorious issues and then ceased to exist. Nebraska loves Kool-Aid.
Nebraska? What's in Nebraska?
You.
Nebraska is a great state. It's home to, well, not much, really, but that irrelevant fact doesn't stop Nebraskans from feeling proud of their state. So much so that they clutch at straws when it comes to finding things to make them feel unique and special, in a good way, among neighboring states. And one of those great achievements that don't get enough coverage by the news media or history books is the fact that Nebraska is the land where Kool-Aid made its first appearance, announced itself to the world, and made a really big splash all over the map. From Nebraska, thousands of pitchers of syrup made their way to the homes of hardworking Americans everywhere, only to meet their demise just a few yards from their final destination.
I'll be back.
Such a distinction should be celebrated, don't you think? Nebraskans certainly think so. And being the astute overachievers they are, as soon as they make such an important decision, they spring into action right away. People voted unanimously to make Kool-Aid the official drink of the state. There wasn't really a vote or anything. It's just an idea that was floated around, and getting a lukewarm response was embraced enthusiastically by the then governor of the state, Ben Nelson, who made it the law of the land. There's a Kool-Aid Day festival.
Oh, Whacky Day, oh, Whacky Day.
If If Nebraska is proud of its stature among neighboring states as the birthplace of Kool-Aid, that pride is nothing compared to the gushing passion the town where it all started feels. That town is called Hastings, and the nice people of this charming town will go out of their way to remind every stranger who strolls into town that it was here where Kool-Aid was born and bred. But saying it to your face when you're having a quiet drink by yourself at the bar doesn't seem to be enough for the local townsfolk. They insist on shouting it over the rooftops.
I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore!
In a splash of color and pomp and ceremony, the likes of which hasn't been seen in these remote parts before, Hastings devotes a whole day to celebrate Kool-Aid. Why, I hear you ask? For no good reason, seems to be the logical answer. But hey, where's the harm? If some folks want to spend a whole day drinking a sugary drink, who are we to judge? And to be fair, the festival has more to offer its visitors than just the enlarged figures of the belly pop pitcher and its spawn. There are beauty pageants, drinking contests, and car shows. When we say drinking contests, I mean contests to see who can chug down Kool-Aid faster than the rest. Kool-Aid Day is an occasion to celebrate artificial flavors, not alcohol. There's a dark side to the story. This next fact is really dark. If you don't like stories about cults and maniac leaders who take their followers down a path of doom, then you should skip ahead a bit to where we tell you about mixing Kool-Aid and pickles. You've been warned. So our sordid story starts at the end. The place is Guyana, and the year is 1978. Cult leader Jim Jones is at his rope's end, and everywhere he looks, he sees threats to his cult and his utopia. Jonestown is no longer the paradise he had envisioned it to be. His followers are deserting him, and at any moment, the local authorities will move in and arrest him. As drugs and delusions take over, Jones becomes more erratic in his thinking as well as his behavior. He sees there's only one way out, and since he's a coward, he doesn't want to go alone.
My children rejoice, the hour of transformation is close at hand.
In a horrific endgame twist, he offers his 900-strong followers a poisoned punch, promising them it will deliver them to the pearly gates where St. Peter will usher them in, no questions asked. The contents of the punch that killed the men, women, and children of Jonestown is in dispute to this day. Some say it was made from Kool-Aid, while others insist it was really Flavor-Aid. However, this tragic event led to the unfortunate phrase that invaded our pop culture, drinking the Kool-Aid. Try mixing Kool-Aid with pickles.
Don't eat that. That's bad. You'll hurt yourself.
You'd think Kool-Aid and pickles don't mix. One is a sugary drink, and the other is a salted, preserved vegetable. But it's also true that both have a lot in common. They're bad for your health since they pump sugar and sodium into your bloodstream and make your heart work overtime.
We're in a serious pickle.
So imagine when you combine them into one weird-looking side dish that you can share with your neighbors at barbecues and get-togethers. It's not clear who came up with the idea first, but in the southern states, pickles aren't pickles until you've soaked them in Kool-Aid. Steeped in the colors and flavors of the sugary drink, the pickles become something truly unique. And no, the salt doesn't neutralize the sugar, nor the other way round. It's one heck of a concoction where the syrupy fruit oozes both brine and glucose in your mouth, together at the same time. It's a wild experience and definitely worth giving a try. If some folks enjoy their pickles flavored with sugar, all the more power to them, as long as they don't try to deep fry it. Wait, that's actually a thing too, and supposedly it's good. Kool-Aid had an original Whacky name.
Wacky waving inflatable arm flailing tube man.
The story of Edwin Perkins, the man behind Kool-Aid, is not a well-known one, at least to previous generations that didn't have social media and the internet. So for the sake of those who don't know it, we'll cover it here quickly. Edwin Perkins was an outstanding chemist who spent much of his time outside the lab. There was no white coat for Mr. Perkins. He had no use for one, as he went door to door selling medicines and household products.
I simply respect the chemistry.
He even went one step further and started filling orders through the mail. This crucial move would help him later when he creates Kool-Aid. But for now, he was happy selling a liquid concentrate, which he called Fruit Smack. Why that name? That's anyone's guess. Perkins, it seems, had a knack for exotic names that would leave people scratching their heads. Fruit Smack was the precursor to Kool-Aid. In fact, many people would go as far as to say that both products were identical. So why did Fruit Smack fail? fail and Kool-Aid make it? That too is another mystery. Maybe the market wasn't ready for Fruit Smack. Maybe Kool-Aid needed the Depression to boost its sales. I guess we'll never know. The Kool-Aid Man is a creepy mascot.
Oh my god, I don't believe it. It's really you. The capital city goofball!
We've already seen the Kool-Aid Man make it into the video game business and comic books. He even had some small TV roles every now and then. And to be fair, none of those appearances were flattering nor impressive. We've seen how his comic book didn't make it past issue 3. The video game wasn't the smashing success one would expect, even at a time when video games were taking the world by storm. So it was perhaps no surprise when Time magazine called the Kool-Aid Man the creepiest mascot in 2011. One thing that put people off the mascot was that every time he made an appearance, he had a nasty habit of bursting through infrastructure.
Oh, yeah!
And there was always juice splashing, and the mascot seemed to relish in making a mess wherever he went, all while being a pitcher wearing tights. It doesn't take much imagination to connect the dots. Tights and mess? If that's not creepy, I don't know what is. Kurt Cobain had Kool-Aid, but not the way you think.
I just ran out.
We talked before about people using Kool-Aid to dye their hair. The colors are vivid, and when they fade, it will only cost you the price of a packet or two to get your lovely hair color back. Perhaps this is why it became a fad in the 90s. Despite the absence of Instagram and Twitter, the fad caught on. And even today, you'll find YouTube videos showing you how to use fruit-flavored powder to give your hair hues that one wouldn't dream of getting at the hair salon.
That was the single most thrilling experience of my whole life.
That's all fine and to be expected, really. Dyeing one's hair like the CMYK color model version of a rainbow is pretty cool, unlike other fads, such as eating detergent products like candy. But when the famous Nirvana frontman Kurt Cobain revealed that he too used Kool-Aid to dye his hair, that came as a shock to many people. It's not like Cobain didn't have the money to go to a hair salon and have his hair dyed with liquid gold if he wanted. So why was the rock star resorting to these cheap hairstyles? It turned out one color took Cobain's fancy. It was the truly vibrant red color. He saw it in the glass and thought, I want my blonde hair to look like that. There's an invisible Kool-Aid.
Hey, you wanna know what it's like to make love to an invisible man?
Speaking of the vibrant colors of Kool-Aid that made it a staple of the artistic palettes of clay artists, watercolor painters, and even Easter egg dye, did you know that there's a flavor of Kool-Aid that has no color? It's called the Invisible Kool-Aid, and if you've never heard of it, that probably tells you something about why people still buy Kool-Aid in the first place. Part of the reason why such a flavor exists has to do with the complaints of many customers that the drink tends to stain their upper lips and anything it spills on. On the other hand, part of the fun is having your tongue turn purple or red or orange. We're pretty sure if the choice were between Kool-Aid with its bright colors or the no-color version, the regular Kool-Aid that we all love would win out every time.
I win.
I mean, imagine the Kool-Aid Man as a giant pitcher of clear liquid. He would practically be invisible, and where is the fun in that? Have another sip and tap that screen for our next great video. Checking us out for the first time? Then take a second to hit that subscribe button and ring that bell to join our notification squad.